dad came to this country in 1925. Our house was between the 6th and 7th fairway, right on the golf course. But I also remember my dad coming from work one time, and I had gotten very interested in baseball. But I didn't want my father to know. So I was batting the ball around, and so I saw him coming, because he used to walk from the house to his lesson area, to the shop. I hid my bat and ball under the porch. That I can remember. But then in 1932, when the Depression was getting kind of bad, my father was offered the professional job at the Campo.
Okay.
And so he accepted that position. We just went back and took everything we had because we never expected to come back here. Well, I was very young, and of course, all I can remember are the ones that work at the club.
Okay.
Joaquin Bernardino was one. Mauricio was another one. And we went back from 1932 to 1936.
Okay.
And in 1936, my father was still competing throughout Europe. In 1936, he had designed a set of clubs that he was going to introduce in the shop that year. So he went to England to get a pilot set. And while he was in London, he called my mother and he said that he had decided to come and visit Ernest Jones in New York.
Okay.
Which he hadn't planned before he left. And so he no sooner got here than the Civil War started. And then he wanted to go back and get us out, and Ernest Jones said, no, you stay here, because if you go back, none of you get out. So by his staying here, then we were allowed to leave Spain to join him in this country. And of course, in Spain, golf was a rich man's game. There were people, as a matter of fact, we took some clubs for some members that they were going to pick them up, and of course all our vehicles were searched, and they thought they were barrels for guns. So they really wasn't very well known. You know, although golf was something that was in the family, but my dad never pushed it.
He didn't have to push it?
No, as a matter of fact, he didn't want me, later in his year, he didn't want me to become a professional.
How come? Did he understand?
Because he felt it was very difficult a business to get in to get a good job. When the war was declared, the people that I knew at Northwestern and personally, and always tried to make arrangements for me to enlist.
Okay. In
the Navy, then in the Air Corps and the Army, but they wouldn't take me because of the Civil War. They didn't consider me a good risk.
Really?
Yeah. But they could draft me.
Even though you weren't a citizen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the time they said if I didn't respond to the draft that I could probably never become an American citizen.
I see.
So at the time, you know, I was becoming Americanized. This was my country. And so I went into the service. I got drafted and went. I had my basic training at Camp Han in Riverside, California. And then, after I was in the service for about a month or so, they gave me my citizenship.
Okay.
So, you know, my life has been a series of good fortune and good luck.
I know.
And I played with 3 generals.
Did you?
Yeah.
Beaten?
But interestingly enough, when I checked in at the starter's gate, the starter there was a gentleman who had, I believe it was his left arm, in a leather sling. And when I gave him my name, he said, oh, are you any relation to Angel de la Torre? And I said, yes, he's my father. He said, you know, your father was considered one of the best short game players to come from our country. When I got out of Northwestern, he needed an assistant, he couldn't find one, and he wanted me to get a job and use golf as an avocation and play amateur golf. But since he didn't have anybody to help him, I asked him if he would get me to work for him. That summer, while he was looking for an assistant, I was looking for a job. Well, I never left. I played on the tour in the fall and winter. I didn't play it full time. Number one, we didn't have the money, and we never asked my parents for money. We didn't believe in that. And so I would work in the winter, in the summer, and then save as much money as I could, and then we could go on. But in those days, you know, you could play the tour for $1,400 for the entire tour. Mr. Jones loaned my father $500 to buy a 1936 Plymouth.
For $500?
You can't buy the tires for that amount today. My car, after my child was born, we had a playpen in the back seat. We had a washing machine.
Oh, wow.
One of these little things, portable.
A house on wheels.
Yeah. What happened was that once I got here, I played very little because I was very busy. If you saw I showed my lesson books from 1961 and 68 to the people in the shop. And they had me booked from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Straight. Half an hour for lunch, half an hour for dinner.
Oh, wow.
So there was no time to play. And you know, these young men today, they say, well, how did you prepare for a state open? And I showed them my state open schedule, and the day before, which was a Sunday, I was booked for 8 hours, for 12 hours. I said, that's the way I got ready for my tournaments. I suppose that, like I've always said, once you have your swing, if you don't fool with it, you always keep it.
You do it properly, you work
Well, I
on.
teach in the same way.
Okay.
Because I teach, anybody that teaches the system, we teach through principles. And principles don't change because you're 10 years old or because you're 50. Now, we use different words with a 10-year-old than we use perhaps with a person like yourself. But as far as applying the principles, they don't change. Now, if I have a little boy that's 6 years old, and I have a beginner that has never played, I tell him to do the same thing, brush the grass. Brush the grass. Because if they can't brush the grass, they can't hit the ball. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're 60 years old or 6 years old. If you don't brush the grass, forget the rest of it. So the principles are the same. We may have different approaches, but the principles we use are exactly the same. Established people, like the professionals, most of the time, I have to get them away from mechanics.
From?
From mechanics. How do I do this? Nobody knows the how of things. You know what to do, but the how is the mental reaction to what you want to do. Everything we do in our life is mental. Everything. Nothing happens until your mind instructs the muscles to do something. It doesn't affect an established player like the professionals, the tour players. Mm-hmm. But if you get a beginner that wants to learn to play golf, and you give them all that information, they don't want any part of the game. And I can understand why so many people don't want to pick up the game. It's being made too complicated. Because everybody's used to reading the magazines and listening to the Golf Channel, and everything's so mechanical, and the angles of the arms and the hip, and you know. And you know, it only takes 2.5 seconds to make a golf swing. I mean, how many things can you try and do in 2.5 seconds? Okay. The first thing I tell them to forget everything that they have thought about. This is a new approach, a new understanding of the golf swing, based entirely on the swinging motion of the club. And the difference between the Ernest Jones system and every other system is that we don't deal with body things. We deal strictly with the use of the golf club. You know anything? Because when I teach a youngster, say 6 years old, I don't care where the ball goes. If he gets the ball up in the air, he says, "Yeah, you made me go up." So they have a different perception of success. I think that distance have destroyed the game. The way everything is played today is hit it as far as you can, I'll get it on the green with a wedge. The artistry of hitting 2 irons and 3 irons and cut shots and stuff like that is not there. Like my father shot 61 with 5 clubs, 2 wood, 2 irons and a putter. Now imagine the artistry that man had to have to make all the shots he had to make with just those clubs. Today they have 4 wedges because they buy a club that's just about 60 yards. You know, they do swing the darn thing and they go 60 yards. Yes, everybody's different. And that's why golf teaching is such an interesting, because everybody that you teach is different. Their acceptance of what you say differs with each individual.